Olá, boa tarde e bem-vindos. Já tivemos aqui um bocadinho daquilo que será a conversa desta tarde. Ilhas futuras, como construir ferramentas para convivência. Eu penso que esta é uma questão que nós temos abordado aqui desde o início do ano. Como é que podemos não só imaginar de outras formas o mundo, principalmente quando olhamos para as dificuldades que temos atravessado, mas também como é que poderemos ver modos concretos e práticas realmente para o fazer. E para pensarmos sobre tudo isto, convidámos este projeto que a escola de Vis, na Croácia, uma escola para a construção da autonomia social, uma autonomia que não é idêntica. Autonomia aqui não quer dizer separação, quer dizer criar modos de interligação, modos de entreajuda que nos podem fazer criar comunidade e formar mundos. Eu vou só fazer aqui a apresentação, muito rapidamente, de quem vai estar a falar sobre este projeto e depois a conversar connosco, mas também vos queria chamar a atenção para o microsite que fizemos, que tem mais informações e que está disponível no nosso site. Se forem à área mídia ou à página de internet que anuncia a conversa de hoje, poderão encontrar. Tem com vídeos, com alguns textos, e também informar que vamos estar a registar, portanto, quando for a altura da conversa e das perguntas e respostas, nós teremos o microfone e vamos pedir que usem quando quiserem participar também nesta conversa que queremos que aconteça aqui entre todos. Vai estar connosco. Eu se calhar vou começar já a chamar hello. I think that I will start to call you to the stage. Welcome. I will do the presentation now. So we'll have with us Srećko Horvat. I'll do the presentation in Portuguese. Srećko Horvat é filósofo. Eu tenho de aumentar aqui um bocadinho. Peço desculpa, tenho de aumentar aqui um bocadinho este. É filósofo, vive na Croácia e não é a primeira vez que ele está aqui em Lisboa, já esteve cá há cerca de 8, 9 anos para falar a partir de um livro que escreveu que se chama The Radicality of Love. Entretanto, escreveu outros, Poetry from the Future, After the Apocalypse, e What Does Europe Want, com o filósofo que muitos de vocês conhecerão, Slavoj Žižek. Tem escrito, contribuído regularmente para jornais como o The New York Times, The Guardian, Der Spiegel, Newsweek, Al Jazeera e outros. Teremos também connosco Marko Pogačar, desculpem, escritor de Split, também Croácia, que publicou vários livros de poesia, ensaios e prosa, e editou a antologia Young Croatian Lyrics, seguida também de uma outra publicação, The Edge of a Page, New Poetry in Croatia. Tem obras traduzidas para várias línguas, para mais de 12 idiomas. Portanto, ele é também um dos membros deste projeto da Escola de Autonomia Social. E, por fim, Carmen, que é um dos elementos da dupla Mediengruppe Bitnik. É uma dupla de artistas contemporâneos, baseados em Berlim, que trabalham essencialmente na internet, mas que pensam a internet e as tecnologias e as redes como uma forma de criar ligações com efeitos muito concretos também no mundo onde vivemos em carne e osso, não é? No mundo para além do mundo digital. Todos estão relacionados com esse projeto, portanto é um projeto de âmbito, como já vos referi, de imaginar mundos, de construir mundos e para o qual é necessário todas estas valências que as artes também podem trazer. As artes e a filosofia. Eu vou então chamar Srećko, Marko and Carmen. Welcome and please. Thank you for coming. And I will give you the stage now. Thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
to be today with us.
Okay, thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Liliana, for inviting us to Lisbon. This is our first presentation and talk about ISA, the Island School of Autonomy in Lisbon, in front of you. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll just make a short round of introduction and try to start from a broader context, and then we will dive deeper into the very specifics and activities of the school. And then, of course, we are really looking forward to your feedback, to your questions, and exchanging thoughts with all of you here in the audience. So you presented that I'm Srećko, Carmen, and Poga. So what do a philosopher, an artist, and a poet do on a stage in Lisbon, and what do they have in common? Besides friendship, what we have in common is this crazy utopian project on a very relatively remote island in the middle of the Adriatic Sea, which started some 4 years ago. But as I said, we'll talk about the specifics a bit later. How we wanted to start this conversation is putting it in a broader political and social context. So I think everyone here in the room is aware that we are living in unprecedented times, that we are living in times of what some authors would call the polycrisis, which consists of course, of the climate crisis, of war, which might at any moment turn into a world war, and of technological advances which are already radically changing our realities and penetrating deeply into all aspects of our lives. We are convinced, and that was one of the inspirations of the school, that all these problems in a way go back to education. And when I say education, we don't mean education in a very specific meaning, you know, high school or faculty and so on, although that's also something we should consider, and we consider it as problematic, but much broader in the sense that today most of the education is happening not in the school or in the faculty, but for the younger generations it's actually happening on TikTok, Instagram, and social networks, and that's the kind of real education youngsters are getting. And we think that in order to change our current predicament, which consists of the climate crisis, war, and technological advances, we need to rethink and reframe our way of thinking itself. One of the inspirations behind this project is Ivan Illich, who was an Austrian philosopher originating from the island of Brač, which is kind of near to the island of Vis, who coined the concept of deschooling, but also tools of conviviality. And one of his quotes says that the problem, it's from the 70s, that the problem of contemporary education, I think it's still correct today, the problem of contemporary education is that it became just a replication of the main values of capitalism. And that's what we can see all around. Also, fast forward, we founded this and started with this some 4 years ago. Nowadays, if you look over the Atlantic Sea, you can see an attack on universities by Donald Trump. You can see that he's cutting funding for the biggest universities, that actually we are facing an end of universities all across the world because they are either faced by cutting budgets or by privatization. So I think this is the kind of framework in which we started. We come from different backgrounds, theoretical, artistical, poetical. Members of the school are engineers, architects, permaculturists, all sorts of doers and thinkers. And what we have in common is that we actually try to build something materially and by our example to try to build a model which can be either translated in a specific local context, or it can inspire others in the same way we are inspired by some other projects. So I think the best way to move on is maybe for Carmen and then for Marko to explain what drew them towards ISA, what do they find? I mean, what I said is just my opinion. How do you, for instance, see the reason and the reasoning behind co-founding the school, and what kind of problems does it try to address?
Yeah, thanks, Srećko. I think for me, so I'm a visual artist, internet artist based in Berlin in a very urban environment. Usually my work is in museums or art galleries and very also probably dedicated to the infrastructures of the urban environment. So, you know, internet, electricity, all that. And I think for me or for us as a collective, what the school really gives is a space for experimentation where we can think about creating parallel, to not say alternative technologies, or at least think about what technologies could be if they were serving us as communities and not profiting the people who own them. And what we've seen in our practice is that technologies, because they're so embedded in how we use them and in kind of the creating process that we have around technologies, it's really hard to rethink them on a piece of paper. You actually need the space for experimentation. And this is, to just put it very, you know, in very short terms, is something that the school can do because we are a collective of people, so there's like more than just two. There's more people to work on stuff, and we're creating also the technological infrastructures, I would say, again, from the ground up on a very small scale, but by this process also rethinking what this means to us.
Well, on our long journey here, I was leafing through this like international editions of newspapers that you can find at the airport. So I've seen an article featured about a tiny island in the Bay of Naples that I visit often and I love a lot. It's been owned for centuries by a rich aristocratic family, but what happened like some decades ago, like a very severe storm, one of these storms that are okay if not induced, but for sure fueled and amplified by, you know, the outcomes of Anthropocene, which is basically the outcomes of capitalism piled up. So one of these severe storms wiped this patch of land that was connected, this peninsula, with the mainland, so that ictus, and basically it made it an island. And it ended up, of course, with increasing its price tremendously. So what the baron or duke or whoever, the family had said, voila, now it's an island, we can sell it for millions, and the price is only increasing because all this, let's call them people because there's no better term, like Elon Musk's or Jeff Bezos and blah, see it as an ideal residuum now, a secluded place. There's a remnants of a local villa, of a Roman villa, and a huge dilapidated mansion from the 17th century. So perfect place for one of those to buy it for billions and billions and make kind of, you know, its own shelter for the time of crisis and if the war starts on the mainland and so on and so forth. So for me, at least, I think for most of us, ISA is something like just the opposite. We went to this island that it's secluded by its position somewhere right in between Croatian and Italian coasts, between Split and Monte Gargano. We went to the very heart of the island, basically in the middle of the forest. You can only reach it by a, let's say, 1 kilometer long goat trail. And we are trying by various tools of conviviality conceived in a very broad sense. We try to build, I would say, like a sort of a platform for various social activities, communal practice, as like a grassroots movement from down under, from below. And I mean, what brought us together? You said like we come from very different walks of lives. So I'll come back to the term that I know Srećko likes very much, an Aristotelian term of poiesis, of bringing to being, creating, making. But as we know, poiesis always comes with semiosis, with production, organizing, structuring of meaning. So those two always come together, but I think ISA brings them together with praxis, with both theory, philosophy, and the very the doing of praxis, making praxis happen. For me, myself, but I think, we come, ISA is an umbrella, it's a platform. It might differ in a tiny bits and facts between us here. We are a large group, but for me, the main tools and main kind of points of view, what's in it for me, and is like, on the one hand, it comes from the local, communal ways, means, and tool of organization, local practices. When I'm saying local, I'm thinking like at least the Mediterranean basin. For us, Gaza is local, Lebanon is local, Algeria is local, like even Spain, Portugal, Turkey is local. And if I want to represent it through a quote, I'll go to like the most famous modernist Croatian poet Tinujević, who said already in the 30s, that we should form sort of a league between artists and fishermen for self-help, sort of a gilda of writing, creating, and physical labor people. And the other set of tools and theory for me, it's like, let's say, dominant discourse and theory of Yugoslav Communist Party from the 70s on, the principle of self-governing, theoretized mostly through Edvard Kardelj, but what's important, Yugoslav communists never made it like a super firm written in stone doctrine. It was always, even theoretically, conceived as a work in progress. And if you want to represent it through a quote, okay, I'm paraphrasing, is the last sentence of Manifesto of the Communist Party of Yugoslavia that says something like, even our own, postulates, theorems, and deeds should not become ever sacred to us. We always need to redefine them, rethink them, restructure them, reuse them. I think kind of ISA is somewhere on collision of these two principles.
Yeah, I mean, to connect to what Marko said and speak a bit more about the island itself and also its history, I think, it's directly inscribed into the partisan history of Yugoslavia. So this island was, as most of the places of Yugoslavia, occupied by fascists first, but it was never occupied by the Nazis. Unlike all the other islands and Split and all of the other places, it was never occupied by the Nazis. Once it was liberated from the fascists by the local population and the partisans, it became a headquarters for Tito. I guess you still know the name, or you can Google it. If you don't know it, who was the leader of Yugoslavia? At that time, he was the leader of the resistance movement. And basically, the Nazis attempted an assassination in May 44, somewhere in the mountains. It was a guerrilla fight in Bosnia. By the way, Che Guevara, when he met Tito in 1959, said that if we knew about your experience of the anti-fascist struggle, we think that we would do our revolution much sooner in Cuba. Because it basically was a guerrilla warfare in the mountains, on the rivers, on the islands, and so on. So after the Nazis tried to assassinate Tito, the leadership of the anti-fascist movement, liberation movement, moved to this island, and Tito and them were operating the resistance movement from a cave. And our school is basically based 10 minutes walk through the forest from that cave, incidentally or not. But anyhow, this is the kind of historical context in which we are in. But I also would love to connect to what you said, mentioning this island near Naples and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and so on, because this is obviously, and what happened to the island? The title of this event tonight is Future Islands. I hope there are some fans of the band Future Islands as well here, a great indie band. But it kind of wants to imply that all the places in the world will become some sort of future islands, either metaphorically or literally. The sea levels, so some 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum, this island was not an island. Actually, Croatia, which now has more than 1,000 islands, had only 3 islands. Of course, it wasn't Croatia. There was no Croatia 20,000 years ago. But anyhow, this region geographically, geologically had only 3 islands. Everything was the mainland. Then in the last 15 to 20,000 years, the sea levels have risen for 120 meters. From the moment when the ancient polis, which was the first Greek polis in this part of the Adriatic called Issa, we took and created an acronym out of it. From that time, so in the last 2,500 years, the sea levels have risen for 2 meters. The projections until the end of this century is at least 1 meter. But constantly, if you follow the news, this is changing, because if the Gulf Stream collapses, which is a highly likely possibility, if permafrost or whatever, it might be a few meters. So in that sense, the places which are not islands yet at this moment might become islands. And it also reminds me of Gilles Deleuze, the French philosopher, who in one text which is called Desert Islands, said that islands are nothing but top of mountains which are not covered, which will be covered by the sea, and the other way around. So I think this kind of deconstruction of what an island is also very important to us, especially in relation to the mainland, because also very often islands, also like villages and small communities, are perceived as something which is backwards, which is fragile, where there is no innovation, nothing, and so on. But what we are trying to also inscribing our project in this long history from the ancient Issa to the partisan resistance and so on, what we want to show is that islands are basically places where very avant-garde things happen. And the sea is not something which is dividing, but the sea for centuries, as you know very well here in Portugal, was also connecting cultures through the transmission of knowledge, through the transmission of culture, through lingua franca, which also still exists. A few people still speak it on our island, and so on. So what we want to do is also to kind of deconstruct this dichotomy. Why would progressive avant-garde art or theory or praxis happen just in Berlin or in London or somewhere? Actually, through centuries and thousands of years, it was happening, this kind of innovation. We don't really like the term innovation, but anyhow, this kind of experiments, social experiments, political experiments, were happening on places which, from today's perspective, look as marginal or presented as marginal or as something which is kind of outside. Yeah.
Maybe just to top up Srećko's historical story, because it actually relates a lot with today. How the polis, the classical Greek polis, was funded is like it was a group of colonists from Syracuse. A lot of them former slaves, probably, and so on. That basically arrived to the territory of the ancient tribes, ancient Illyric tribes, Liburns, and so on. And built a polis. You've seen this cemetery a couple of minutes ago. That's the place in the island where the amphitheater of the Greek polis once stood like, and now there's a church and cemetery on top of it. But with Greeks, with the colonists, they brought also different cultures that we are still leaning upon today, and we see them as autochthone. But I mean, they brought olives, they brought wine grape,
cats.
They brought cats probably. Yeah, I mean, so all these things that we that these people were sort of surviving upon for centuries, and some of them are still surviving on that, on olive oil, on wine, and so on, even today. I mean, they were brought to this. Probably initially only 2 or 3 ships of colonists. So in a way, I mean, of course, symbolically and metaphorically, we are also trying to relate to this, to kind of build an infrastructure to, through some tools, to build another tools, a bit larger tools that can also be of use to the community. I mean, maybe Carmen could introduce us to some of the particular projects and...
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to, as a relation, I think this historical view is really useful when thinking about today's networks and technologies, because we tend to forget that we have many of the technologies we use have predecessors. You know, this connection through the sea, this exchange of knowledge. We are kind of in a way, being colonized by technologies from Silicon Valley which are kind of trying to exchange these networks of exchange we already have by, convincing us that Facebook is the better way to exchange knowledge, or TikTok is the only way to kind of connect with people. And even though these connections kind of enable a globality, I think they do have difficulties, and it's really good to look back and kind of remember what we got out of the older networks and try to reclaim this also for the newer networks. So the house is off-grid, as you would say. So there's, it's a very old stone house that was probably used as a support structure for the growing of olives or wine at this height. So the whole land is terraced still. There's no connection to running water, to sewage systems, to electricity. And this, of course, with today's technologies is easy. I mean, it's easy to gain the knowledge to connect this all up. And this is something we've been working on in the past. So what we already have is some solar panels we're experimenting with, where we're trying to hook up the house.
This is the water tank.
Yes. This is the old, they're just trying out the old collection of rainwater into the cisterna, an underground water tank. Cisterna. Yes.
Same. Great.
Which we've now, over the years, also reconstructed and made sure the water doesn't leave, tightened all around. And I think with many of these systems, we're always thinking about integrating what is already there and trying to amend it with the needs we have today. So what we're building, or what we've been working on this year, is a circular water system, where we try to integrate the rain collecting system, but then also thinking about how to purify water, how to use water in a kitchen or in a toilet system, and then re-purify it and recycle it in a circular system.
Maybe also a couple of words about the pirate radio, about the memory of the world.
Yes.
Library.
Yes. So Srećko is very good at filling the actual structure of the house with actual books. So there's a huge library in place, like you can visit, of physical books that Srećko and others have collected over the years. And we're working with a project called Memories of the World, which tries to digitize these books and keep them, or provide the technical term is a shadow library. So these are libraries that are that don't pay attention to whether the material is pirated or, in this kind of legal thinking of copyright. They digitize books and try to provide them for the future, for access online. And we have a local copy of Memory of the World running through the solar panel at the house, which you can access on any device. It's also on the net, but we host kind of a local copy. And we've also started experimenting with pirate radio, both very low frequency, very localized, and also with larger antennas. Vis is an ideal place. It doesn't have a local radio station anymore. It receives radio signals from the mainland, both from, it's kind of divided. On half the island you get the Italian broadcasts, on the other half you get the Croatian broadcasts. It's quite interesting in that way, so it's very easy to put up your own radio locally and kind of, provide the island with a local broadcast.
Hijack the feed.
Yes, and I think our interest in kind of reconnecting also with something like radio, which is a technology that's been around for nearly 100, a bit more than 100 years now, is also that we see it as, by then networking this back into the internet, for example, you then get really interesting ways of disseminating content again.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, some other activities, but also then to lead it back to a more theoretical level and then slowly open the floor for your interventions. If you have them, we hope you have, is some other activities we have been doing, like educational ones. We do lectures, workshops for kids from 6 years older and so on, in acting, workshops on philosophy and so on. But also we do workshops on 3D printing. Luca and Marina from our group, they're doing this, which they, using, again, technology as a convivial tool. How can you use something like 3D printing to actually help the local community? So, for instance, the local community was traditionally for hundreds and thousands of years a fishing community. Even on the island, there was a factory called Jugoplastica, huge during socialism, producing fishing boats and so on. But nowadays, if something gets broken, you cannot even go on eBay or wherever to find a missing part for the boat. So some locals already approached us, for instance, with the missing parts, which our friends, part of ISA, produce little parts from 3D printer. Another thing which we had also was workshops in Esperanto, for instance, with the conviction that language and communicating is very important if you want to change the world or preserve a sense of community or build a community. Exhibitions, music. We had an event, a solidarity event with Palestine. Poetry is very important. And all of this together, radio, as Carmen mentioned, water collection, where we combine traditional tools and modern tools, dry stone walling, the tradition of Mediterranean. Actually, it all comes back to something which we call social autonomy. It's in the name of the school. And of course, maybe some of you familiar with Italian philosophy and the post-operaist movement, know about autonomy. That was Franco Berardi before in the 70s and so on. But we're not talking about autonomy, but about social autonomy, because as the quote here said by Elisée Reclus, our intention is not an escape, because we know there is no escape. There is no escape from climate crisis. There is no escape from war, and there is also no escape from technology, from the drones, from the geolocation tracking and all this kind of shit. So we're not escaping. What we're trying to do is to kind of reconquer spaces and rebuild and reinvent spaces of autonomy, which is social autonomy. Why social autonomy? Because autonomy, or what in Greek would be called autarkia, self-sufficiency is not sufficient. So we're not trying to build some sort of self-sufficiency, but we're trying to rebuild convivial tools for rebuilding autonomy on the individual and collective level, which then has to be, and we're trying to do it, and this is, I hope, one example of it, it has to be socialized. It has to be connected to other communities which are not just on the island of Vis. So this is, a very concrete location, maybe on a remote island and so on, but we're not claiming we are special or it's just happening in Vis. We met many people and we're in touch with Palestinians, with Kurds, with Zapatistas, and other people who inspire us as well in other places. And I think mentioning what Poga said, Elon Musk, the newest trend of the Silicon Valley oligarchs is, if you have seen it recently, on the one hand, in the United States, it's called freedom cities. Startup nations, they want to build autonomous zones, business zones, in territories of the United States, which would have their own rules, tax exemption, own police. You've seen it with the fires in LA. The rich people had private fire brigades, for instance. And then you have also someone who is the darkest among them, Peter Thiel, who is building something, at least announcing something in the Mediterranean to build a city called Praxis, and already was funding something, I think Honduras, if I'm not mistaken, Prospera. So they have a dream of autonomous cities, societies, and so on, which are the complete opposite of what we are trying to do. And what we are trying to do is actually we are not preppers, preparing for the apocalypse. We think we know it already happened, the collapse is already here. It's just not, as to paraphrase William Gibson, it's not evenly distributed. Although we are on the front line, especially the Mediterranean, which is like heating twice as much as the rest of the world, we are on the front lines of climate crisis. And in that sense, it's a perfect space for experimentation, not for resilience, which I hate personally as a term. It's this neoliberal term, everything is going to shit and let's just try to adapt. Like Venice is the best example with that thing which is preventing the floods. It was, when they built it, it was projected for the next 20 years. But now, in the meantime, everything accelerated so much. So it's not resilience. It's like already in the now and the here, trying to build tools which can be useful even in emergency situations, such as pirate radio, but can also be useful for many other things and for what we think is building good life in times of extinction. Something like that. And
just to go back shortly to the praxis, to kind of to learning, connecting, growing through the deeds, through doing. I think it's very important for the school, and I just wanted to point out this motto that you could probably see behind us at the screen. We are building the school is building us. I mean, it's a paraphrase from the old socialist slogan, we are building the railroad and the railroad is building us. It was one of the biggest slogans of these huge working actions back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it did turn out that a lot of us who are basically, as Carmen said in the beginning, we are based in big cities, we travel a lot, we sit and read a lot, write a lot, that basically we also lacked physical work, and it did turn out that it's really liberating. And I mean, some of the working actions that basically we depend on, because the very lot is extremely secluded, and so you've seen it, everything needs to go there. We tried donkeys, but it turned out that we couldn't get donkeys. The donkeys tend to be very stubborn, so we had to be the donkeys. So everything needs to go. I mean, all this gravel, everything, you need to shovel it in a bag, put it on your back, and walk 1 mile on a very steep road. So it basically, we did it also in small groups, but it works the best if we have like 100 people, like 150 people, so you make chains. So I mean, this processuality of this very thing that we also, when we started, we didn't really know. I mean, this self-organization really kind of happened as a process. We didn't really know how it's gonna look like, but then it turns out that when you bring more than 100 people there, somehow within 15 minutes they form groups and they just redistribute different type of work among themselves. I mean, according to their skills and abilities and according to what they want to do. And basically just to observe this process and to analyze it afterwards, it's, at least for me personally, very important for understanding some things, and basically it can be used as a foundation for a kind of way broader educational practices that we want to kind of insist on in the future.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, what you say with this with the limits that you have, because everything you want to use at ISA needs to be brought there on somebody's back and is like a lot of trouble. I think this is really interesting because it kind of means that we will not build, I don't know, 100 solar panels, because we don't need 100 solar panels. You know, we kind of figure out how much electricity we need, and that's exactly the amount we're willing to carry up. And I think this is really interesting. And I think for me, one of the most, personally, one of the most, wow moments of the project was that we have been carrying up materials to, you know, we had to rebuild the roof, so we were carrying up wood and stones and whatever else. But then somebody joined the group who is a professional stone waller, and he carries up nothing. He builds, he terraforms everything from the materials he finds there. He needs a shovel and a pickle, and he goes and gathers stones in the right dimensions, and he knows how to put them together. You know, it's a very complicated technique, but he needs nothing. And this for me was like very powerful in the sense that I feel without these limits, we tend to just bring in more materials, throw more materials at problems, and this doesn't seem to be a very good way of solving problems. And this was, to me personally, very inspiring. I mean, we still carry up a lot of stuff, but you know, this...
But I think that is taking us exactly to the next step of the or next big project, that is basically kind of connecting all these dots, like the old ISA, the ancient ISA, the Polish ISA, contemporary ISA, and it's kind of throughout this in-between history of Ireland, and this like idea that as much as possible is done from the resources that are found on spot. This is the next thing we want to build, and we're about to start soon, is basically this little valley was terraced like probably already in the 18th century, and until the 70s it was covered in vineyards, and they were growing like rosemary, lavender and so on. Now it's overgrown in maquia and in the thickets and so on, but we plan to clean it and to build into this slope, into the existing terraces, basically using the dry stone wall technique and the material that we can find on spot, sort of an ancient Greek theater that would be like an open air venue for like, let's say 500 people, the big one, and then the smaller auditorium. So, and that would basically enable us to organize like, let's say, big scale events on the spot, but I mean, that would still imply like they would be, let's say, relieved of this touristy, of the conference tourism part and so on and so forth. Srećko can probably fill me up.
Yeah, we are building a pool, a garage, and such stuff. No, I mean, I think we talked enough. We can talk further, but if at this point you have any question or a comment, please raise your hand and let's broaden the conversation. I can see one question there already, and the mic is here. It will come by our dear friend from the left. So I think we maybe raise the hand again, and then I see your hand in the second row. Yeah, you're the next one. You. We wait for them. Yeah. Now we have two mics.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't hear you yet. Not yet. Maybe he can help you to switch it on. If not, there's another mic. Not yet. Maybe can you bring...
Okay, yes. Now it's working.
No, it's pretty loud.
Okay, good. I'm sure you know about the Global Eco-Village Network. I wonder if you already thought about collaborating with the Global Eco-Village Network, because your idea for this school seems to be totally aligned with what the with what Jen is doing. And by the way, this summer, from the 12th to the 17th of August, Jen is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And there will be a big event in Hungary near Lake Balaton. And perhaps it would be interesting if you submitted a proposal for a workshop about your project at the Gen Gathering. The deadline is March 31st, so you're very well on time. It would be great
tomorrow.
if you... I'm sorry?
That's tomorrow, not tomorrow.
No, that's in about five days' time.
Yeah, that's much more.
So it would be really, really interesting because okay, you will do permaculture. You're all about autonomy. You're all about post-carbon transition, and it will be a great place to find like-minded people and allies.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're aware of them, but I think the deadline is too soon. We are like constantly, I mean, that's our problem. I mean, we're trying to build capacities. We're constantly now recently invited to various places. And actually, anytime we are here, we are not there. That's also a problem. I mean, there are other people there as we speak, which is our luck. But we also tend to kind of minimize. But anyhow, we'll consider it. So thanks a lot. We've seen many similarities with that. Yeah, I saw a question by you in the second row. Yes. Maybe you can raise your hand again so he can see you.
Oh. Hola. I wonder, where is the community? I would like to see the community or to feel the community that you talk about. And also I was really sensing what you are saying, that when you are not there, you are not there. Because there's a heart pumping of the people that dreamt this to happen that needs to be in the field. You can feel it. And so, for instance, if it is like so hard to come up with this, with the stones and the wood, how can the children come up? Well, the children is not very difficult. The old people.
Yeah, children, not a problem. I have a daughter who is now 3 years old. And since she was a few months old, I would carry her first here, which I loved the most.
And now she carries
And then
you.
I was carrying... No, she's just 3 years old. Then it was here, and then now she's walking up. The problem is a bit with older people or people who are disabled. That's something we're aware of, but we didn't solve it yet. So we will solve that as well at some point.
But was this dream shared with them as you were starting it?
Sorry?
As you were starting this you know, like bringing the rocks and the stones and dreaming the school. Did you have like meetings with the local people?
Yeah, I mean not like official meetings, but many people you can. So this is a video which is
many people are local. The ones that you see.
Can I respond? Yeah.
If you want.
I mean, you asked me, so I can, but I don't have to. No, you can keep the mic, whatever, but I just want to respond. So this video is old. I think it's 2 years old or something. But half of the people you can see in the video are local people. The guy Carmen mentioned, who is the dry stone waller, he lives on the island, he's local. We're even paying him a salary, so we're also trying to employ people. We talked to many locals. They're helping with their vernacular knowledge and so on. You don't see the community here. I mean, so the island has a population of 3,500. That's not big. When we do events in Komiž and Vis, which are so we don't do events just uphill. That's also part of the answer to your question, which I think is about inclusivity. How can you reach it and so on?
No. It's about the conviviality.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about the inclusivity. Like, for instance, like how do you eat and all these things. Like, do you learning with also I don't know if they are fishermen. I'm just sensing. I'm not criticizing.
Yeah. So last event we had in October, we had almost 200 people uphill, which is huge, without any toilet yet, for instance. So we're just building a compost toilet. Yeah, everyone was shitting in the woods, which is also a very... Poga can tell you more about it. Poetically, it's an interesting experience also to leave your boundaries and go there. Anyhow, we're building on toilets and so on. So we had 150, 200 people uphill. A big problem is how do you feed the people, the volunteers, and so on. So we invited for it. So we had one local guy, friend, who was doing kind of traditional Mediterranean cuisine, cooking uphill. with gas. We had another friend, Kevin Kenyar from Rijeka, who founded something which I think you might find interesting. If you know about the non-aligned movement, the non-aligned movement was the biggest internationalist non-aligned movement founded by Tito, Nehru and Nasser, which was the global South movement, including Yugoslavia, many African countries, Asian countries, and so on. And this friend of ours founded something which is called the non-aligned movement. Naan is the Indian bread. And the concept is that each time you choose two countries, now it's more than 100 members of the non-aligned movement, two countries, for instance, Senegal and Indonesia, and you make a fusion out of it. So he was cooking for 200 people there. And it's quite a logistical undertaking. So that's about cooking, but also to come back to you, conviviality and community, the relation with the community. Not all programs happen uphill. Our idea is that most of them will now start happening uphill once we have the infrastructure, a small amphitheater, a big amphitheater, facilities like a toilet, an outdoor kitchen, all this shower, we're just building a shower, all this kind of stuff. But we're also having a lot of events around the island, which are then where we have local poets, fishermen who are part of the program and so on, and the local population comes. We have 100, 200 people at events. So it's kind of integrated in the island.
The thing is that, especially, I mean, in the Mediterranean, I think in more or less any island, but especially in the Mediterranean island, you can't do anything there if you're not part of local community. I mean, and if you are not like closely interweaved with inside the local community, because, I mean, you're gonna get, to put it very simply, you're gonna get sabotaged, you're gonna get expelled. I mean, you're gonna be seen as a foreign body that kind of imposes, and that, you know, the mainlanders came to tell us what to do and to do whatever they're doing, we don't wanna know. So basically, I mean, and this is a serious problem, because it basically orders you to find methods and to approach properly. I mean, not to kind of, it is a serious problem, because, you know, you're always seen as some, you know, like, these kind of intellectuals that come from big cities and they don't know, like, physical labor, and now they are showing us what to do and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, you need to find your way around it. I think the best way is to be very honest with the people, to keep them posted, to approach them, even if they kind of, what you get back is not nice in the first place. You start building there. So, I mean, there's nothing without local community there. I mean, so that's why we try to lay down as many, like, workshops for the kids as possible, and so on and so forth. You need to collaborate with local library. You need to collaborate with, like, I mean, also with the local authorities in a way. So, I mean, it's closely intervened, and it's getting more and more integrated, because there's no, like, as Srećko said, this kind of autonomy is by no means autarkia.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, talking about the local community, I think one way we've tried to react to this, or, you know, kind of integrate in a way, is this island is very touristic. So in the summer months, it's nearly impossible to, or it's not very interesting to run a program, because we would be running it for a tourist community mostly. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but the island is like
10, 20,000.
Exactly, it's like a multiple of the people who actually live there, and also the people who live there, they're mostly in some way invested in the tourist work. So they're also really busy. So I think what the school has done is brought people, content, but also thinking to the island in the times where there is nothing. You know, where this kind of, the island has these very strong seasons, and we've tried to use this and engage people in their off-season.
Maybe an interesting thing to say, that one reason why the island is so overflooded with tourists during the summer is that from 1945 all the way to like basically 1995, the island was closed for foreigners. It was naval base of Yugoslav Navy, like the southern post towards Italy and so on. So basically there was no tourism at the island. There were two small hotels, mostly focused to the families of the soldiers who were serving there. And of course you could come as a local from Split, but not as a foreigner. So basically the island was left untouched. That, of course, during this touristification and commodification of every single thing in the world led it towards this, that it's being observed as, the Mediterranean as it once was or whatever, and that made it super packed during the summer. But during this time between 1945 and the early 1990s, the island was really like alive. I mean, it had, it was producing, it had schools, it had basically, very developed agriculture, fishing industry, for Portuguese people probably familiar, canned fish industry, and so on. Basically, all these traditions were wiped away and almost lost during the last quarter of century. In the last 25 years, it seems that even the islanders themselves forgot that they lived even before tourism. In a way, we are trying kind of to reconnect to the life in the island before this kind of extremely invasive touristic plague.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we take a few questions, 2 or 3, and then we respond, we distribute among ourselves. Yeah, please.
Hi. I got curious because you talked about learning or speaking Esperanto, the language that, 45 years ago I learned a song in Esperanto that I still know today, but it was a time when it was still a project, I think, I don't know if everywhere, for it to become a universal language of the whole planet. But then I lost trace of it, and then kind of English language became organically the international, kind of universal language that we all share here. So I'm very curious to know where is it happening, if it's only you, is several different communities, who is using and revitalizing Esperanto language?
Thanks. Yeah, let's take a few more, and then on that side. You who have the mics, you decide. Self-organize.
No.
Huh?
I managed
So,
to speak.
No. Yeah.
peço desculpa.
A senhora...
Sim.
They say we need a mic, so
Okay.
try to use it.
Thank
but
you.
that's not working, or what?
No,
No,
it's
it
working. But can I,
Sure, go
thank
ahead.
you. No, thank you, and thank you to Culturgest that we can have the three of you, because we learn better what it takes and who is behind. And thank you for your great presentation. I have 2 questions. One, I would be interested in your decision-making process. So how does that work, and who's included? And the second one is Convivência. Also, by learning now that this island was somehow protected, so we are also sharing our environments with other species. How is this interspecies understanding on the island influencing your practice, your respect for? Because I saw what you do, and maybe some others had to leave because you arrived. So I was just wondering how this type of Convivência plays into your work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Shall we take one more so we don't forget all
Yes.
the questions, and then we have you will have time for another question, but there is one.
Yes.
That's you.
Yeah. I had a question about, we touched upon the topic of the location, and one of the goals of the school was also to basically change a bit how education is done. And I was wondering a bit about how does this connect? So say if I imagine more a rural place like that island, I imagine more an education that's maybe more connected to nature and so on, while in cities, I see that connection lacking more. So just wondering, what are the reasons that brought you to decide to do it in an island rather than maybe in a city, if it were mainly practical or more theoretical, let's say.
Any of you wants to start, or?
You want to start with the Esperanto?
Yeah, I don't have to say much about Esperanto. I don't know Esperanto, but we have people who know it very well. For instance, this Esperanto workshop was led by Judith Meyer, who is a polyglot, speaks like more than 10 languages, and is part of the Esperanto community. And it was really nice because some members of the Esperanto community from the mainland in Croatia came, and some others, and so on. And then we also found out that there was an Esperanto meeting at the beginning of the 20th century in Komija, which is this small fisherman's place. So we recovered also some local history. But I think her workshop was on the subversive role of Esperanto. And I think that's very pertinent today. And we will try to continue it. That was just an example of a first workshop we had. To come to your questions, when we arrived, did we kick out someone? To rephrase your question? No, because uphill there was literally no one for the last 50 years. Literally no one. That's the part of the island
I think it was focused to the other species.
No, I'll mention that as well. Humans, we didn't kick out anyone. There was no one. And that's connected to what Marko was saying. The main mindset in Croatia, but also in Portugal and everywhere, is tourism. Growth, progress, tourism, profit, rent everything you have, rent your toilet, rent your bedroom, and others sleep there. So for that reason, and for the last 50 or 60 years, that part of the island was completely left. It was producing lots of wine, even during the time of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy and so on. And when it comes to humans, there was literally no one there. And we are the first humans probably rebuilding something in the last 50 years. When it comes to other species, we encounter mainly insects, birds, snakes, and so on. The problem is it's a very interesting question. Marko mentioned donkeys. We did a lot of research on the island, and like during the Austro-Hungarian monarchy 100 years ago, I think one figure says that there were more than 1,000 donkeys on the island. Now, what I hear from my friends on the local level, there is not more than 10 on the whole island. And when we tried to get donkeys for that, I think we called a few numbers and so on, and some were stubborn, as Marko said, but most of the locals didn't want to borrow us the donkeys because they're not used like that anymore. And then, of course, when they heard what we are doing, they said, "You're completely crazy. We will not give you our donkeys." But then, thanks to modern technology, we used electric wheelbarrows, which 10 years ago you couldn't use. There was no technology like that. The traditional wheelbarrow, but this is electric one, and it's really useful. Regarding other species, we're very well aware of it. I mean, many of us, I'm, for instance, a vegetarian for more than 20 years. So I'm very aware of other species. For instance, this February, we had small 30 people working action, working on the water circular system and so on. And we had a friend who came from the mainland who has something like 100 beehives on the mainland somewhere near Zagreb, and he volunteered to construct 10 of them. So he arrived, and then we mapped the terrain, we find the perfect spot, and now I think in August our first bee colony is coming, and we are trying to mix it with the local bees, because the mainland bees are not used to the heavy winds of the island, so they don't survive very long. So now I don't know anything about bees. I didn't know anything about reconstructing a roof, but we are learning. I also don't know anything still about Esperanto, but we are learning about it. For instance, we will come back, and then I shut up because you can also join decision-making process like we had, and it's connected to other species. A nice person, Aleka, who is now in Greece, she recently came with a proposal that we need to build houses for bats. And it's very interesting. I mean, I also don't know anything about bats, but then I started to read it, and obviously the island is a very interesting bat space because it has a lot of caves and it has a lot of endemic species. And if you were ever bothered by a mosquito, then you know you can start appreciating bats, because bats can kill like thousands of mosquitoes or something like that. So they have various functions, which I think it's again about conviviality, how to live. Convivial means to live together in a way. So how can we live together also with other species? But we're just at the start. I don't want to bullshit you that we have a understanding and we will build an intergalactic, interspecies, whatever. Yeah, so we're at the start. We're very well aware of it and experimenting and learning from people who know much more than me, Carmen and Marko. Decision-making process, we're in the middle of it. Like at the beginning, it started from a group of 15, 20 people. We bought the land, which is now for 99 years rented to the school, so it's kind of secured that it will be public. We have an NGO which operates the whole operation, which is a non-profit, which also helps us sometimes to fundraise when we are successful and so on. And since we had now in October 150, 200 people, of course the question becomes how can people who come contribute in a meaningful way, co-decide and so on. So now we opened the process. I mean, to be completely clear, I founded a few movements, DM25 with Yanis Varoufakis, Progressive International and so on, and this is not a social movement. This is, and it won't be a social movement. Sometimes people come and expect this to be a social movement, but it's not. So if, for instance, if you're building a terrace which has to host 100 people, you can't really have direct democracy about it. You have to listen to the architect and to the engineer, because it will kill people if I decide about it. But what we are doing now is to open the process, and it looks like that we founded 5 or 6 working groups, which will be joined by those people who came, but it's also open for others. One on material infrastructure, the other one on education, what kind of programs we are doing, the third one on digital infrastructure, the fourth one on fundraising, and the fifth, I don't know what. And now it's kind of, we're broadening to other people, but again, it's an experiment. And we are aware of it, that we want to open it to other people who can join and participate in it, but with a kind of combination of verticality and horizontality, to put it in more abstract terms. Over to you. And there was another question, I think.
Yeah, no, in terms of, I think this question of the other species who are there is really interesting, and we've been like really learning a lot from the local communities about also, for example, the trees that are there, that because this land was terraced and used for like centuries, and then suddenly stopped being used, you have makia trees that are all the same age. And that is really bad for fires, for example. You know, you would actually, if you want a healthy environment, you would now need to cut certain trees, plant other trees, make, you know, this kind of, and this is interesting in a way, because, you know, especially me as a person from a city, this is also the same problem Berlin is facing with wildfires. Berlin has had very hot summers. So I'm based in Berlin. We're surrounded by forests, and these forests have the same problem. They're all the same age. They're all the same type of tree, and they burn like matches. When it starts burning, it's hard to put out. And this is a problem that Berlin is trying to solve by recreating these forests, and we're kind of doing this on a very, very small scale by speaking to people who, because I think for people who, especially who have a family or a long family history there, it's clear. They look at the land and they're like, this is, you know, it's not good. But to us, we don't see that. And this is a very interesting process of learning also that we're trying to pay attention to.
Yeah, and maybe just to add a bit to this, like a deliberation process, that a lot of us come from various movements, or we were involved in various movements that were based on direct democratical principles, plenums, and so on. And of course, we do try to implement some of those practices and to keep it as open as possible. But as Srećko said, again, through practice, we kind of also became aware of certain boundaries of this radical self-deliberation, and we are trying to keep it somehow open but functional. Yeah, it's a combination of horizontality and verticality, where verticality, I think, usually represent this axis of responsibility. Like someone, because it's a project that can lead to, if you do things wrong, it can lead to wildfires that can ravish the environment. It can lead to significant tectonical ruptures in the local community that is not big. It can really cause a lot of harm. So we really need to be responsible about it. And sadly, responsibility usually requests at least certain form of verticality. So that's why.
Yeah. Next round of questions. I hope we answered some. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions. One is how you got finance in the beginning, how you started, how you got funding. And the second is once the school is the center of your project, really what are you schooling? Or which is your market for schooling? What schooling will happen in your development? Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. When you were talking, you were mentioning that a lot of the activities that you're doing is, you're going to this place and you're having to figure out how to, there's no sewage, no water, no technology. You're building this house, the bees, the purifying of the water. I guess there's this sense of sort of taking things back in time, in a way. And I guess I wonder why you've taken this approach. And sorry, I was thinking lots of different things, so I'm trying to bring it together. But yeah, I guess it was striking to me that it seems in some ways like a sort of artistic project. You've got this context of sort of planetary collapse and becoming an example in a way. And so, yeah, I'm just curious about how maybe then you see this project. Is it, sorry, and that's probably quite a few questions. I'll just stop. Yeah.
Maybe one more because we'll forget all the questions, and then don't worry, you will all have. We can stay here until tomorrow. So,
are you here?
We are staying until tomorrow. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to ask you for a more clear picture of what you do. How many people live there, up there? How long they stay? What are the routines? Do you wake up early and you're 10, or you wake up earlier, you're 2, and people join you? How it works? Because it's not very clear if you're just there for a period of workshops or if a lot of you live there.
Yeah, maybe I start again and then we make a round. So from this question, at the moment no one lives up there. And that's also a question, I think many similar projects had a problem. Carmen can tell she was active together with Domagoj from Mediengruppe Bitnik in the squatting movement in Switzerland. And as everyone knows, in the squatting movement or any project like this, as soon as someone lives in the institution itself, it becomes a problem. So the house itself is a library and it's the headquarters. With the idea we have 3 hectares of land. So that's something like 30,000 square meters. It's quite big. And the idea is that we have a kind of decentralized, that after this we are attempting to build other structures, like a geodesian cupola, Mongolian yurt, whatever, facilities where people could stay over. So at the moment, no one is living there. Almost at any moment, someone is there working. Not every day, but every 2 days or whatever. And it really depends. I mean, it's really like a lot of people already involved. So at some point it can be 30 people. At some point it can be 2. It depends. I wake up very early at 6 or 7 because of my kid, and then I go uphill. For instance, when I'm there, I'm like half a year on the island, half a year somewhere else. Some people are there all the year. Some people are less. So that's just this. But it's connected to the question you made about temporality. Like one of our slogans and philosophies is called pomalo. Pomalo means take it slow, literally, but it's a version of festina lente, the Latin saying which says you have to how do you say it? Festina lente, hurry up slowly. Or the saying which the Zapatistas had, we walk slow because we walk far. And on the island, wherever you go, instead of saying hi, ciao, people would probably say pomalo. Or if someone asks me, or I ask you, shall we meet tomorrow? When should we meet? And you would probably, if you're a local one, say pomalo, take it slow. So there is really this, but that's not unique for our island. I think that's a kind of Mediterranean philosophy, a sort of southern thought where people have time to sit. And to sit, I mean, the older people on the island are sitting like for 10 hours on the river and just looking at the sea every day for the last 50 years, and they're not bored by it. I mean, it's a different, I think that's important in alternative to the capitalist 24/7 acceleration where everyone is following some sort of, I mean, time is money, as the saying says. Coming back to your question about funding and money, obviously you need money for this. So at the beginning, the first or 2 years, many of us invested our own money. We didn't have any kind of funding. So we collected money to buy the land and then to make a contract with the NGO and so on. Once we founded the NGO, we were happy to receive a few private donations. One of the first one was by the voice you have heard at the very start, that's Pamela Anderson. So we received a modest donation, but generous from Pamela Anderson at the beginning, from some other people. At one point, we also received some crypto donations, which really helped us. And so far we didn't receive any funding from the state, for instance. We received some little funding for the workshops for the kids from the local community, from the local authorities. And for this water circulation system, we received funding from an EU project called STARTS, which is a broad project supporting this kind of projects. But I think that's something we work on. Mainly we depend on donations at this moment and enthusiasm, because you can't really pay 150 people who stay on the island for 1 week and are crazy enough like us to carry stones uphill. There is no money in the world which can pay that. So we are really happy that we have these people who actually enthusiastically work in the same happy Sisyphean way as us. There are other questions, but Carmen and Marko are here.
Well, I mean, there was one about like seeing it as a sort of an artistic project.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I have to say, also ISA is a platform. It's like a lot of people involved, and a lot of people have kind of different angles of looking to this common good and this infrastructure that we're building. And I mean, of course, we stand on very similar political or maybe also theoretical grounds, but the angles tend to differ, sometimes even significantly. Me personally, I don't see it as an artistic project, although we facilitate a lot of we organize a lot of artistic events like literary evenings, exhibitions, like art projects, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I basically see entire ISA as a tool. And I mean, so it's upon the one who wants to invest time and energy into using this tool to decide, how exactly to use it. And I think our role is predominantly and maybe first of all to build the tool. So I mean, you can also probably observe it as a sort of ars, But for me, it's more like techne in this phase.
Yeah, I think for me also your question was interesting. Who do we school? I think it is the volunteers who come there, whoever, whether they're from the island or from somewhere else. Last year, this festival we ran had a lot of elements of schooling each other, I would say. So, the people who came were both giving workshops, but also participating in workshops and carrying stones. So it's this kind of, I think this is the way we see knowledge, or the necessity to share knowledge in a different way, is also trying to build a space where knowledge can be shared that doesn't work along the lines of this capitalist school thinking or traditional school thinking. But this is something we're also developing in a way. And I think for me, the way we're trying to very experimentally develop, all these project parts does have aspects of being an art project in a way, because it always produces an aesthetic surplus, which I would say is kind of the point of what art does in a way also. So, I mean, it's true, it's a tool, but it does also have the potential in many moments to be more than just a tool, or to mean something more to people. And this is also where I think people connect, and why we've had volunteers who've come back multiple times, because they find something that speaks to them. And also this platform gives them the freedom to develop something that speaks to them and others, or their whatever they perceive as their community or their audience, that kind of goes beyond what you would find in a more classical structure. At least that's what we hope. But it's I oftentimes feel that there's not a lot of, I mean, this is also good in a way, there's not a lot of examples to aspire to. I mean, there's always parts, but in this combination it becomes complicated, and we just try to kind of be open about failing also. I mean, this realizing that you're failing, or that something isn't working in the way you imagined it, I think is also very healthy for a project. But it's also hard sometimes, to kind of fail and realize you're failing. And we try to kind of integrate this.
I mean, we are also schooling ourselves. That's I mean, part of the process. I mean, to kind of reschool yourself through the process. And of course, whoever wants to join to this process of deschooling and reschooling is invited to.
Yeah, maybe we go for the next round of questions in the second row, and then there. Yep. And I don't know how much Liliana will tell us when we have to.
Thank you. About your radio projects, I don't know if the projects are how developed are at this point, but I have a few questions. Do you use a legal frequency? And if the answer are yes, it's easy in the island to get that legal frequency, because in Portugal it's not. And what is the paper of the radio project in the school? If local people participate, what kind of program you have in that radio project? If there are informative or artist experimental, for example, and I'd like to hear you talk about the radio project.
Sure.
Thank you.
How many questions are there all together? Can you please raise your hands?
One more there.
One more there, one more there. So I suggest we take these ones, and then we have a last round of responses, maybe. Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. I would like to ask you if you believe in degrowth.
Degrowth?
Yes.
Yes.
And if you have any ideas to, I don't know, to change the system, the educational system that we have now, which is more or less the same all around the world, because we need to do that. These projects are good to start something, but then we need to just move around the system and try to, I wouldn't like to say educate the new generation, but to elucidate the new generation. And if you have any proposals, because that's a field that I would like to explore. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I think yes. Here in the second row, at the beginning, here in the middle. Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm still a little bit here with the word conviviality and trying to understand how far does that notion stretch for you. So far I hear a lot about the project being at the start, so at that stage. And for me that connects a lot. I hear also about the ambition to grow, to build auditorium. So progress. So I hear also that this is also permeating, I imagine, your day-to-day. So I'm imagining a conviviality that is involving a lot of work, a lot of action-oriented, goal-oriented, purpose-oriented activities. And the question is, if having fun, and I understand that planning and working can be also a lot of fun, but
sure.
If something like having fun for fun's sake, or having no purpose in the way that you co-live and do things together, that's also something that it's included. Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm. So I suggest Carmen responds the radio question.
Yes.
Because she knows much more than us.
Yeah. I think, so we, Mediengruppe Bitnik, have been working with radio for probably 20 years now in different ways, but our approach has always been artistic, to say that we've used radio mostly as a tactical tool. Never with a license. The licensing, I mean, this is just on a side note, is actually quite interesting because the frequencies are being liberated. Many countries this year, Switzerland, just a month ago, Switzerland, for example, just cleared the FM band. They're not using it anymore. They're on digital.
Obsolete, yeah.
So suddenly, I mean, this question of pirate radio, which was like, you know, in the 80s was like, people went to jail for like long periods of time for illegally making radio. That's off the table. Nobody cares. I don't think anyone is looking at the FM band anymore in Switzerland. And I think that's quite interesting because it suddenly opens up new spaces. I think our interest in radio came from the fact that we realized early on in our practice that technology, the way it's produced within a capitalist system, always tells you that, or always tries to keep you in the role of a user. It tells you it's all very complicated, you know, you need a degree, nobody understands the internet, it's totally impossible, don't make your own website, very complicated. You know, this type of approach. And we come from a very DIY background and we really want to know about stuff. And we realized very early on, radio is very, very easy to replicate technology. You can literally, 20 minutes, you make your own radio broadcast device, which will broadcast, you know, within this room, but it's the same, you know, you just make it bigger and it will reach more, or you make the antenna bigger and it reaches more, but the technology is the same. And this is something we've been doing throughout the last 20 years. We've been soldering small pirate radio devices that work on a very local level. And it's very empowering because you just do it and you know, 20 minutes later you have a functioning radio system. This is of course not the 24/7 broadcast where you know, produce programs. That's not necessarily the idea, but we've kind of started with this. We're actually now, we've been invited by the Festwochen in Vienna to run a radio workshop where we will try to take this a bit further and talk about tactical uses of radio in, you know, when things break down, because there have been in the past like very interesting ways of using radio in kind of counter or protest culture, and we'll be looking at that. So it's something we're exploring. But I guess on Wies also, I mean, I'm not sure how the creation laws are exactly, but I don't think anyone is paying attention to the FM band.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But
so maybe this about the radio.
Try to shortly answer the question about like how to say not completely instrumentalized practices of spending time together. I know this beautiful Emma Goldman's quotation comes to my mind. I don't want to be a part of your revolution if I can't dance. I think there's a lot of, for us, I think it was never a problem of this kind of not being able to structure things in, like, let's say, situationist way, or just to float around, to, you know, to have a derive around the island and to party. I mean, we all come from different backgrounds, and we kind of...
And backgrounds as well.
And backgrounds at the same time. Yeah, I mean, we tend to work hard in what we do, like in our core, whatever, practices. And then it was never a problem for us to party a lot, to just hang, to spend time in, you know, to socialize through unnecessary and not goal-oriented spending of time. Vice versa, it was actually very hard to find mental energy, mental time, and then physical time and space to, after you do all of your work, then to take time to you know, to picture some goal that you need to go to, that you need to reach, and then invest like loads of time and work, mental, physical, organizational, into reaching it. So I think it's more about making yourself work more and work harder, and to keep this goal somewhere here, so that it keeps you afloat. Because I mean, we are all overworked. We are all, you know, I mean, as you know, like, I mean, all of us probably here in this room and out of this room. I mean, it's kind of, it's working, doing these things on the account of your own well-being. So I think partying and like socializing is what keeps us kind of sane. And I think without that part, this probably wouldn't work, or it would work in some very weird way. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to come back to this and to you, Goran Bogdan, you have seen him on here. He's one of the best actors recently nominated. The movie which we also have shown on the island, The Man Who Couldn't Remain Silent, about the war crime in Yugoslavia, was nominated for the Oscar. Anyhow, he had a great answer to your question, as if he heard your question, where he said that in today's world, where everyone does something with a goal, in order to be efficient and to reach something which is a very concrete goal, what he thinks is subversive, and I agree with him, and where you can find meaning is precisely to do the opposite, to do something where there is no outcome. I mean, there is no profit out of it. You know, for years we were just carrying stones, like literally we brought like 20 tons of material already uphill. And from the perspective of even of the locals who are now mainly in tourism, that looks completely ridiculous and meaningless. You know, why are you doing this? There is no purpose out of it. And I think we have to recover this kind of, Albert Camus has this beautiful ending of the myth of Sisyphus, where at the end he says we have to imagine Sisyphus happy. And that's us, you have to imagine us happy, and we are happy with every stone we carry up. And to come back to your question, degrowth, I mean, it's something which is close to our hearts and minds and theories, and many people who are involved in ISA are degrowthers. But I personally wouldn't describe it as a degrowth project. I wouldn't describe it in any kind of adjective, to put it like that, because it's a very heterogeneous project. We have anarchists, we have degrowthers, we have communists, we have artists who don't give a damn about anything or whatever, politically and so on. So I think that's the beauty of it, that it's very plural. And to come to your second question, which brings me back to the beginning, this is not a social movement. I see the urgency to change the existing institutions, educational institutions, but that's not my role. I decided to build parallel institutions. And I think today we have to build parallel institutions in an age where the institutions we knew about, nation state as an institution, which is a recent one, exists 200 years maybe, somewhere is coming back with Orban, with Putin, and with Netanyahu, for instance. But generally, it's disappearing in a way. I mean, big tech is taking over nations. Palantir is taking over the health system in UK. They are freedom cities now already growing and so on. So instead of reclaiming the nation state, God forbid, we want to build parallel institutions, and also that for education. I see the necessity for people who are university professors, school professors, kindergarten, work in the kindergarten and so on, to change the institutions from inside. I'm always happy to support them. But for me personally, that's not my role at this moment. Maybe it will become, I don't know. So ISA's role is also not, as I said, it's not a social movement. Our role is not to come into a university and change it. And it's not us to teach the young people what they should do, although we can facilitate these discussions and share our experience. But if you look what the younger people are doing today, we should learn from them. And I'm specifically talking now about the things which are happening in Serbia, which is the unprecedented student movement in Europe since '68. For more than 4 or 5 months, more than 95% of 4 or 5 months, 95% of the universities in Serbia are under occupation and the governance of the students.
But also schools.
And that's what and it's spreading to schools, pharmacies, blockades of cities, bridges, and so on. And I learn from them. When I see those people who have 20, 25 years old, they are smarter than us. They are already doing in practice self-governance, social autonomy, self-management. Of course, it's a big question where this protest will go with this. But I think everyone here in Portugal, in Europe, should learn from the Serbian students at this moment. I think this is the most radical movement in the recent years in Europe. So it's not us, the role of this small school on a remote island, to teach them what to do. Although we had some students and people from Serbia at the school, although me and Marko were part of the occupations of faculties in Croatia some 15 years ago, so there are interconnections, but I think our role is more to bring those people together on a space which is a very special space with a special temporality, to be able not only to recover, it's not a recovery retreat or whatever, but to exchange ideas in a more productive, constructive ways. And then when they go away from the island, they can be useful in their communities, in universities, in occupations, or whatever you want. But I don't see ISA as a project or a social movement which is going around and then making a revolution. No, I mean, some revolutionaries come to the island, some will become revolutionaries, but we're not a guerrilla camp, which doesn't mean we will not become it, given the global situation. But
and degrowth is, it's an interesting topic, and we are getting this question a lot, and we will be getting it more and more. I think, for me personally, it's a slippery slope. I mean, some aspects of it are, of course, to be taken in serious consideration, but especially in this semi-liberal green discourse of degrowth. I mean, from what I'm seeing currently, from my perception of the things, it's way, way, way socially inconsistent and insensitive. And I mean, the main question, as almost always, is the degrowth for whom? How do we distribute this degrowth? Yes, degrowth of the Silicon Valley, but tell these stories, to the people in Central Africa or to the people in parts of Asia. Tell Congolese people that they should kind of this mining is dirty. We need to scale it down. It's not good for the environment. I mean, it's green liberal crap. I I know that was not what you had in mind, but it's the perspective we often get, very socially insensitive vision of degrowth. No.
Yeah.
I'm saying what we are often getting as laid out as the face of.
Yeah, but anyhow, we're not against it. Some people who are involved in ISA are degrowthers, but at the same time, we're also critical of it. I could even go further and speak about the German Greens, for instance, but I will not go there. I know it's not the same question, but anyhow.
No, we know it's not degrowth, but we're saying what we are often getting offered under that signifier.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can respond or whatever. You can
Yes.
disagree with us. That's also nice. Final question. One final question. No? Yes? No? Yes. Yes, it's coming always.
Okay, so it's a simple question. I still don't understand where your money comes from. So either you're private funded, or I don't know, how do you survive?
Yeah, we survive by carrying stones. I said at the beginning we invested our own money and then we got private donations. Private donations means like from the Pamela Anderson Foundation, I don't have any necessity to hide things. We got 10,000 euros. That's not much. For us, that was a lot, and it was a game changer at that time.
Yeah, we bought some basic tools with that. The first tools were bought with
we bought a chainsaw by the Pamela Anderson money, for instance. And electric wheelbarrows, 2 of them. One cost 500 euros. I can give you all the details. And in the meantime, we got smaller private donations, for instance. We got a crypto donation. And now we're in the process of fundraising. We're pretty bad at it. None of us is really in that world. Like you could apply for, Creative Europe or this or that and blah. We're not against it, but we are very slow, very inefficient, and we don't have experience in it. But yeah, so far private donations is the main income. Yeah. But there is no mega big millionaire behind us or something like that. Huh?
No. Yeah, currently we are surviving on a crypto donation by let's call it a random crypto dude.
Yes.
Like no one like that comes from like the industry or banking.
Yeah, so we don't have big money. We don't have a big millionaire. Recently there is this trend. Bergruen in Venice, big billionaires, makes a center. The Now Institute in Hamburg, and then you have all these kind of millionaires or private funders or private art collectors and so on. We don't have anyone like that, and we will also not let them in. So,
but I mean, money is one aspect. The other aspect is that over the past 4 years, many people have donated their time.
Yeah, like thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of hours.
Yes.
And that's really, I mean, even if you're a millionaire, you wouldn't have the money to do that. Because you would not convince those thousands of people to come and carry stones for free. For instance, so I think that's the most, if you would count it in money, which we don't do, that would be a few hundreds of thousands of euros, how much you would have to pay all the people to work there. So I think that's also something that's very important to say, that it's not all about money, and we also get a lot of things which usually someone would have to pay it. We don't pay it for it because it's a kind of collective project where the outcome is not someone's private profit or something like that.
And if money runs out this very moment, we'll just keep on in a very slow pace, Then there's just 20 of us, and whoever wants to come, who can, you sleep in a tent and you work as much as you can. It's just it's gonna make it way slower. But I mean, it started without money, you know. It will go on until we have some energy to, and not necessarily we. Someone has energy to push it. Money helps, but it's not.
So if you can donate something, please, of course.
No, I think what the money also did, this initial funding, what it did provide is the space to build certain, spaces for exchange, especially in time. So we were able to run a festival where we could also, for part of the speakers at least, we could
cover fees,
invite them, bring them to the island. And I think this has now enabled us, even though, I mean, Srećko is right, we're pretty bad at it, but theoretically, I think it's enabled us to start certain kind of projects that could in themselves receive funding. The only one we've been able to do this for is the circular water system, which the EU has funded as a project. So this kind of, this is really good in a way because it funds specific aspects, or we can kind of as a group decide what we need, what we want to invest effort in, and then try and fund it through, whatever, public funds or EU funds. But this was a coincidence in the sense that the EU had this interest in funding water projects, and they actually approached us and asked us to, come up with a water project. And we were like, oh, yeah, we actually have the need. So this doesn't always happen, but I don't think if we needed to be at a certain point to even have the capacity to, write this application to go forward with this. This needs a certain level of organizing. And to be honest, at the moment, we don't have the level of bureaucracy needed to run EU projects. I wouldn't know who could handle that from our side.
Yeah, we're pretty bored by that. Yeah, I would prefer to carry thousands of stones every day than to write an EU project, for instance. But anyhow.
Should we wrap it up slowly?
Yeah, we wrap it up. We thank you a lot
for
the great questions. This is our first event in Portugal. We received a lot of good, useful feedback. And if you wish to come, you can find us uphill. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for the questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And comments and everything. Yeah.